Psychological warfare begins in the mind, but like all warfare, its end leads to triumph for one and death for another. The recent Drake beef has taken the internet by storm. Everyone is picking a side. Hip-hop fans are excited about the return of the early spirit of hip-hop, which highlights rivalry and conflict through complex rhymes and catchy rhythms. However, we will explore a deeper matter. What can we learn from this trending feud, and what can we apply to our lives? Let us visit the archives of war and power and look beyond the surface. The late 12th century AD to 1868 AD marked the era of the samurai. Early Japanese warfare centered around the samurai. Samurai, like Miyamoto Musashi, were men of legend who wielded one of the region's most formidable weapons, the sword. From 1603 to 1868, the jute, the katana, the wakizashi, and the bokken swords were the weapons of choice. Samurai would duel to the death for honor, pride, or duty. Musashi, who rose to international prominence, mastered the art of the blade. What few realize is the mastery of another tool in his arsenal, psychological warfare. In his own words, the ultimate aim of martial arts is not having to use them. Drake's explosion in the early 2000s was a combination of skill, allies, and tact. According to Lil Wayne, after realizing the rapper was also the one singing on the hook of his own song, he said, "You got to be the ultimate artist." It was only a matter of time. Between then and now, the rapper-singer has broken any and every box he's tried to be put into. Winning 5 Grammys to date, along with 51 nominations, including soul, R&B, rap, pop, and hip-hop, he went on to become a global superstar and household name. Having allies like Lil Wayne, Jay Prince, and their powerful circle by extension, allowed the young trailblazer to shine through the gritty boom, bap, and cement his name in history. Tact is one of Drake's best qualities. In every era, he was almost able to morph into the most popular artist at the time, almost stealing their powers for himself. By doing so, he was able to become the blend of all of these talented and influential people, taking fashion, rhymes, beat selections, and overall style to create a force to be reckoned with. Along with this copy and paste style, one of the more intelligent things that he had done was to partner with some of these artists. Whenever a new sound emerged, he was one of the first people to not only adopt, but to partner with some of the most popular artists in the genre. We saw it with the explosion of drill music in the early 2010s, the R&B influences from artists like Chris Brown, the pop fanaticism from the great Michael Jackson, and the list goes on and on. Not only does he take notes from everyone around him, but he also seemed to have an amazing ability to sniff out new talent and partner with them, such that every time his name is about to be left behind in history, he catapults himself to the new thing, constantly staying relevant. Instead of playing the game of the old lion who rules fiercely his entire life and then is killed by the pack in his old age, he decided to share his fame with smaller artists in exchange for remaining relevant, a genius tactic. However, this came with a price, and that is what we are discussing today. As I mentioned, being the lone lion, turning off the pack, can be an exciting experience, but it does come with a bitter end. Perhaps by foresight or observation, he understood the importance of not being isolated from the lion's den, with artists who he has essentially helped to build. This is what seems to be now at his heel. Many of the artists that he's worked with and allowed to have larger careers than they would have had otherwise now seem to be turning against him. What is interesting is that none of these artists appear to be acting individually. This reminds us of the great Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon rose to power during the French Revolution, and he went on to conquer much of Europe during the Napoleonic Wars in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. However, his end came about in large part due to a coalition of European powers joining forces against him. Individually, the Europeans would have faced significant challenges in confronting Napoleon. His army was formidable, and he was a brilliant strategist, so instead they conspired against him, and eventually he was defeated at Waterloo. So what is the lesson? If Drake was intelligent to partner with those around him to sustain his relevancy benevolently, why is it that he's now being punished by those pretending to be allies? We can then ask, was it wise or was it foolish? And if it was foolish, then how can he, the isolated king, be wise? So what is the wisdom in this? The answer lies in one of our greatest desires, companionship. When Drake entered the music industry, it has always been on the tip of his tongue that he's not appreciated, respected, or acknowledged as much as he should be because of his lighter complexion. As a result of this, he has had to overcompensate with bravado, rolling, as they say, with questionable figures and people with actual gang ties. A risky move that Takashi will quickly tell you. In an attempt to prove something to the world, to prove something to others, this desire led him to not only strategically partner and execute great music with appropriate artists, but to want something more, to become a part of a clique, a part of a group that he himself prophesied many years ago that he knew he would never fully be a part of. In a recent response diss track from Rick Ross, Ross goes on to call him a white boy. Ross claims that he wants to be part of the group, hanging with the guys with the guns. Looking at Ross's catalogue, 4 of his 10 biggest songs are features with Drake. In fact, his biggest song of his career was Money in the Grave with Drake. Future has also greatly benefited from the allegiance. Of his 5 chart-topping songs, Drake is a collaborator on 3 of them. The list goes on. All great artists in their own right, but not as large as Drake. It is a deep wound when you realize that you have nurtured the animal that eats you alive. Drake, in his attempt to remain relevant, made a wise decision to make music with different artists in different genres that showed promise. However, his folly was believing that these ties were anything other than strategic alliances. As soon as things went sour, former allies poked at the open wound that he's had from the beginning of his career. It is important, therefore, for us to understand that we must not chase a group that does not want us. Forcing yourself into a group where you feel you may not belong, for social or other reasons, will eventually lead you to your ruin. You will feed the group, they will grow strong, and then feed on your bones instead. We must learn to be independent. It is a large world with people of very different beliefs, backgrounds, and desires. You will find your clan if you keep looking. Do not succumb to peer pressure, and do not prove things to those who do not care for you. You will regret it. What can Drake do now? Individually, none of these artists can come close to reaching the international status or the numbers, the accolades of Drake. In fact, their only chance is by coming together similar to Napoleon in the 1800s, a wise tactic on their part. Excluding artists like Kendrick Lamar, who is also a mega hip-hop artist, all of the other artists and their responses would fade into obscurity. Put together, they form a real threat. By making him an enemy, they now trouble the waters, where others will have to choose sides. This makes it difficult to maneuver in an already counterfeit industry. For Drake to survive now, he must behave like the cornered lion he is. He must slash at everyone who comes at him from left to right, breaking the backs of the hyenas who come for flesh. No Diddy. He must secure his spot once again. He will not be easily moved because he is in a strong position, but if allies continue to fall, so will that throne. Coming down from the mountain to war leaves the position vulnerable. The only way forward is up. The schemes from below the mountain can sometimes reach its peak. Drake must recruit spies and use psychological warfare to plant propaganda in the camp. Turning the enemies on each other is the wisest tactic. Then he can consume the survivor, more #1 songs, more working with smaller upcoming artists, etc. Only now he must understand the importance of work versus play.